The two police officers standing at my doorstep looked visibly uncomfortable. One adjusted his belt, the other avoided eye contact, while behind them, a woman in oversized designer sunglasses and a bun tight enough to lift her eyebrows was practically vibrating with fury. "I want him arrested for trespassing!" she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger straight at me. "He harassed my guests on community property." I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached for the manila folder I had prepared weeks ago, just in case things ever came to this. "Officers," I said calmly, handing them the documents, "you might want to take a look at this." Inside were certified copies of my property records, printed screenshots from my security camera footage, and a detailed guest list that did not include a single name from Brenda Garrison's summer social. The younger officer scanned the documents while his partner watched the woman continue her dramatic accusations, her voice rising in pitch and volume. After a few moments, the younger officer turned to her and spoke slowly, like addressing a very petulant child. "Mom," he said, "these weren't your guests. They were trespassing on private property." The expression on her face was everything I had waited for. Wide-eyed disbelief turning quickly into silent fury. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back 6 months. I had just moved into what I believed was my dream home in Sunset Ridge, a peaceful neighborhood bordering Crystal Lake. My property came with a private dock and a generous backyard, and my realtor had been meticulous about showing me exactly where my land ended and where the HOA maintained park began. What she hadn't told me about was Brenda Garrison. At 5'2", with frosted blonde hair and a designer wardrobe that screamed, "Homecoming Queen, Class of 1989, Brenda was the self-proclaimed monarch of the OA. She wielded her clipboard like a sword, quoting bylaws as if she had personally written the Constitution. Our first meeting occurred just 2 weeks after I moved in. I was in the garage, unpacking boxes, when she appeared in my driveway like a bureaucratic storm cloud. Clipboard in hand, her smile razor-thin. "You must be the new resident," she said without so much as a hello. "I'm Brenda Garrison, HOA president. We need to talk about community standards." I listened politely as she lectured me for 20 straight minutes about grass height, mailbox paint colors, and how patriotic flags must be hung only at a 45-degree angle. At the time, I smiled and nodded, thinking she was just a stickler for rules. I didn't realize she was testing me, poking at my boundaries to see how much she could get away with. Big mistake. 2 months later, I returned home from a business trip to find my backyard overrun. There were at least 30 strangers lounging on my patio furniture, grilling on my barbecue, and using my personal dock as if it were a public beach. Beer cans littered the lawn. Someone had even strung party lights between my trees. For a moment, I honestly thought I had lost my mind. Had I forgotten I was hosting an event? Then I saw Brenda. She was near the dock, holding court like a queen at a garden party, gossiping loudly about a neighbor's recent divorce. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to keep my voice even. "What is going on here?" She looked up unfazed. "Oh, you're back," she said breezily. "Don't worry. We're just using the overflow area for my summer social. The community pavilion was a bit crowded." I blinked. "Overflow area. This is my property." Who she laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, don't be silly. The previous owner let us use it all the time. It's tradition." "Well," I said, forcing a deep breath, "I'm not the previous owner." Now, chaos ensued. Some guests immediately began packing up, murmuring apologies. Others, emboldened by Brenda's arrogance, refused to leave. One man, Dale, I would learn later, accused me of trying to claim community space. "She said we could use it," he slurred, clearly several beers in. "This is HOA land?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a picture of my property survey. "You're standing 50 feet inside my boundary," I said evenly. Brenda turned an alarming shade of red. "This is harassment?" she barked. "You're humiliating me in front of my guests. Feel free to report it," I said. "And while you're at it, mention you've been trespassing on private property." She stormed off, her entourage trailing behind her like disappointed courtiers. I spent the rest of the evening collecting trash and documenting everything. Photos, videos, witness names. My instincts told me this wasn't over. I was right. I thought the uninvited party was the peak of absurdity. I was wrong. 2 days later, I received a letter with the Sunset Ridge OA letterhead. It was signed by none other than Karen. Subject line, "Not of DICP honor a orange far immunity I actually laughed out loud. She wanted to take me to a disciplinary hearing for telling her to stop throwing a party on my private property. The letter accused me of behavior unbecoming of a community resident, harassment of fellow neighbors, and disrupting the harmony of our neighborhood. But I didn't get angry. I got curious. I started digging. I read the HOA bylaws line by line. I hired a licensed surveyor to verify my property lines not because I doubted them, but because I wanted airtight documentation. I installed additional security cameras, 360-degree coverage of my backyard, dock, and entry points. I began logging everything, every trespass, every strange noise. Every flyer slipped into my mailbox without postage. The disciplinary hearing was held at the community center. Karen arrived like she always did, late, loud, and looking like she was running for office. Clipboard in hand, she took her seat at the head of the table, already basking in what she thought was victory. She started off strong, accusing me of verbally assaulting her guests, of threatening senior residents, and damaging neighborhood morale. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply opened my laptop, connected it to the projector, and calmly began my presentation. First, the certified property deed. Second, the land survey showing precise boundaries. Third, photos and video footage of the party, including guests drinking, using my grill, and relaxing in my deck chairs. Fourth, proof that Karen never requested permission to host the event on my land. The room grew quiet. Board members shifted in their seats, clearly uncomfortable. Karen snapped. "This is character assassination?" she barked. "This space has always been used for community events. It's tradition. Tradition doesn't override property law," I said plainly. "Trespassing is still trespassing, no matter how long it's been happening." The board ultimately sided with me. No disciplinary action would be taken. But Karen didn't say a word. She just stared at me with cold. I knew this wasn't over. A few weeks passed. No passive-aggressive letters, no snide comments, just silence, too much silence. Then, one Thursday night, I heard laughter coming from my backyard. I pulled up the security feed. 5 men, one of them Dale from the previous party, were dragging coolers and folding chairs onto my dock. They were setting up shop like it was a fishing retreat. I grabbed my phone and walked outside. "Gentlemen," I said evenly, "this is private property. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Dale turned and smirked. "Karen said we could use the dock for our fishing club meeting. She's the HOA president. She has the authority." "No, she doesn't," I replied. "This is my land and you're trespassing. Leave now, or I'll call the police." "Go ahead," he said smugly. "Karen already called them. Said you've been harassing residents." And then I heard the sirens. 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing, and out of the shadows came Karen, strutting like she was about to win an Oscar. "Officers! Thank God you're here!" she cried out, her voice full of rehearsed distress. "He's been terrorizing the neighborhood! He's threatening residents! Please, do something!" But I didn't panic. I calmly pulled out my phone and opened the security footage for the lead officer, a stern woman named Officer Karen. She watched as the men entered my yard without permission. She saw me walk out and politely asked them to leave. I handed her my documents, property records, survey maps, OA bylaws, all neatly organized. Officer Karen took her time. Then she turned to the HOA president. "Mrs. Garrison," she said firmly, "not only were these men trespassing on private property, but you appear to have made a false police report. That's a criminal offense." Karen's face drained of color. "But I'm the HOA president," she stammered. "I have authority over community space, and HOA authority doesn't extend to private land," Officer Karen said. "Calling 911 with false claims is a serious matter. We could arrest you right now." She didn't. Instead, she issued warnings to everyone present and administered a field sobriety test to Dale, who failed miserably. As for Karen, she stood there shaking. Her sunglasses sat crooked on her head. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "This isn't over." I didn't say it out loud, but I was already thinking it. "You're right, Karen, it's not." Karen didn't know it yet, but she was about to lose everything she'd built her little suburban empire on. I had filed a formal motion for a vote of no confidence, citing misconduct, abuse of HOA funds, and filing a false police report. By the time the next monthly show meeting came around, word had spread like wildfire. The community center was packed, and this time, people weren't there for coffee and gossip. They were there for justice. Karen strutted in late as usual, wearing a power suit and her trademark sunglasses. But something in her walk was off. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know how big. She took the floor with a forced smile. "Good evening, everyone. Let's start with the landscaping revisions I've drafted for." I stood up. "Before we discuss landscaping, I'd like to invoke Article 7, Section 3 of the HOA bylaws." Karen froze. "That section allows any resident to request board review when a board member is suspected of misconduct." I continued. Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's eyes narrowed. "And what misconduct are you accusing me of?" I opened my folder, calm and methodical. "Let's begin," I said. I presented the police report from Officer Karen, documenting the false 911 call. Footage from my security system showing the men trespassing and Karen's arrival. The receipts, obtained via formal request, showing thousands of dollars spent from HOA funds on food, decorations, and alcohol for what were clearly private parties. Written statements from 8 homeowners who had experienced harassment or arbitrary fines under Karen's reign. Karen lost it. "This is character assassination," she shrieked. "These people are lying. I've served this neighborhood for 8 years. This is nothing but a witch hunt." But no one was buying it. "I have Officer Karen's body cam footage with me," I said evenly, holding up a USB stick. "Would the board like to see it?" "Yes," said Robert Daniels, the HOA treasurer, who had been silent until now. I plugged the footage into the projector. The room watched in silence as Officer Karen calmly explained to Brenda, on video, that she had filed a false report and that HOA authority did not extend to private property. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. "I motion for a vote of no confidence," Robert said. Effective immediately, seconded, came 5 voices at once. "You can't do this!" Karen screamed. "I am I am what keeps this neighborhood from falling apart." But Robert had already begun the count. All in favor. Over 40 hands went up. Opposed are 3. Karen's reign ended in a single breath. She stood so quickly that her chair fell over. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll sue! I'll destroy every one of you!" She grabbed the gavel and hurled it across the room. It bounced off the wall and nearly hit Mrs. Chen. Then, as she stormed toward the exit, she misjudged the door and slammed right into the glass wall beside it. Her sunglasses went flying. Someone chuckled, then another. And finally, the room broke into full-blown laughter, not cruel, just relieved. The spell had been broken. Karen fumbled for the real door, mascara streaking down her face, muttering threats that no one took seriously anymore. For the first time in years, she was powerless. Robert resumed the meeting. Calm, efficient, confident. He nullified all outstanding fines issued by Karen in the last 6 months and scheduled a full audit of HOA finances. 2 weeks later, Margaret Stone was elected as the new HOA president. Margaret was quiet, honest, and humble. Her first order of business: to install a decorative fence clearly marking the boundary between my backyard and the community park, ending all future disputes. The motion passed unanimously. Justice had a new face in Sunset Ridge. And Karen, she still lived in the neighborhood. But no one listened to her anymore. Karen may have been removed from power, but I knew her story wasn't over. Not yet. See, while digging through records for my HOA defense, I stumbled upon something odd. Expense reports that didn't make sense. Charges for catered food, floral arrangements, even rental fees, all billed to the HOA for events that, oddly enough, took place in Karen's own backyard. With Robert now serving as interim president, I proposed a full audit of HOA funds. The results, shocking. Karen had been bleeding the eye dry for years. Nearly $15,000 in misappropriated funds. She used community money for alcohol and gourmet catering for her private parties. Outdoor heaters and LED lights installed, not in the community center, but at her own patio. And worst of all, invoices from a high-end spa, disguised as resident wellness programming. Robert immediately called an emergency board meeting and invited a lawyer who specialized in HA law. Karen refused to attend. But she couldn't stop the truth. The attorney laid it out clearly. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was fraud. And under state law, she could be criminally charged. The board voted unanimously to file a formal complaint with the local prosecutor. A month later, Karen stood in front of a judge. She wore black, no makeup, no sunglasses. Just a pale, bitter version of the woman who once ruled our neighborhood with an iron clipboard. The judge read the charges. Karen Garrison, you are found guilty of misdemeanor embezzlement and misuse of community funds. You are hereby sentenced to 200 hours of community service and required to repay $15,000 to the HOA. You are also barred from holding any HOA or community office for the next 5 years. Karen stood frozen as if the world had tilted. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just gripped her handbag like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. I left the courtroom before her. Outside, the sun was warm, and the breeze smelled like cut grass and lake water. Freedom. But then I heard the unmistakable clack of designer heels behind me. Karen. She didn't say a word as she walked by. No eye contact, no venom, no smugness. She looked defeated. Human even, and beside her was no luxury car, just a modest, dusty SUV. The queen had fallen. Weeks later, I got a text, BBQ at Tom's place tonight. Come by. I did. And it was perfect. Lauder, grilled ribs, kids running around with water balloons. A neighborhood finally free from fear. Then it happened. Karen appeared, walking her tiny Yorkshire Terrier, now in a rhinestone vest. She took the long way around the lake, avoiding the shortcut through my yard she used to call hers. Someone from the party called out, "Hey Karen, wanna join us?" She didn't flinch. She just walked faster, eyes straight ahead, back straight, the dog yapping indignantly at our joy. We didn't laugh. We didn't jeer. We just let her go. Because sometimes the most powerful justice is silence. And knowing that, for once, she couldn't twist the story. She wasn't the queen anymore. Just another neighbor, walking past a life that had moved on without her. In the end, what I reclaimed wasn't just property. It was peace, not through yelling, not through revenge, but through truth, patience, and community. I never wanted a war. All I ever wanted was to enjoy my quiet little backyard, grill a few burgers on weekends, listen to the lake lap against the dock, maybe plant a few roses. But life has a funny way of testing you. Because what I learned is this: if you don't stand up to abuse of power, you become part of the silence that protects it. If I hadn't spoken up, how many others would have kept suffering under Karen's reign? How many would have paid fines for lawn height, been denied access ramps, or felt shamed into silence just for trying to live in their own homes? Now we have a real community, not perfect but kinder, more transparent. And Karen, she still lives here. She still walks her dog, but she takes the long way now, past the lake, around the perimeter, avoiding the shortcut through my yard that she once claimed was for everyone. I don't need her to apologize. I don't need her to look at me. Just knowing she now understands boundaries is enough, and that for once she feels what it's like to be ignored. Justice, even when late, is still justice. And sometimes, it looks like a backyard barbecue, and someone forced to take the long walk home. Have you ever been treated like your voice didn't matter? Like someone took advantage of your kindness or used power to push you down? Tell your story, because you're not alone. Comment where you're watching from, your kitchen, your lunch break, maybe your bedroom after a long day. And if you've ever faced a Karen in your life, remember, patience and truth are some of the strongest weapons you'll ever hold.